You may have heard that money cannot buy happiness. That once you have made enough money to cover your basic survival needs, that any amount of income past that will not make you any happier. Now, you've probably heard that because of this study, which was done back in 2010, that surveyed 450,000 respondents about well-being and income, which found that after $75,000 in income, there is no further progress in emotional well-being. Now, on the surface, this does sound like something that could be logical. After all, most problems that we experience in life are a result of not having the resources to be able to handle those problems. Therefore, an increase in income up to that amount could make you happier, but because happiness is something found from within, you're not going to be any happier beyond that. But there are a few problems with this. Number one, this study was done back in 2010. So even if we take this study at face value, we have to account for inflation in between then and now. Adjusting for the official CPI inflation numbers, $75,000 back then would be about $110,000 today. But that's just the official numbers. If we take the real inflation numbers, the number's probably a lot closer to $140,000, maybe even $150,000. But there's a second problem with this, which is that this is a per person income figure, which means if you're sitting there with a wife and kids at home, that you're trying to put food on the table and pay for the mortgage and multiple cars to take them to school, you're looking at least twice this amount, potentially even 3 to 4 times this amount, which means for the average household, you would be looking at anywhere between $300,000 to $600,000. Now, this number makes a little bit more sense because for the average household, if you sit down and you list out not only your basic needs, but also your basic wants. I'm not talking about Lamborghinis or jets. I'm just talking about your basic wants, which, by the way, includes saving for a rainy day and investing for the future. If you were to list out what that would cost you, you would probably be at least a couple of $100,000, at least for you to be able to afford all of that and not be worried or stressed. Which begs the question, if this study is so outdated, why do people keep on repeating it so often? And have there been any studies done after the fact that would provide some more accurate, up-to-date numbers? And the answer to that is yes. In fact, this study, which was done just in 2022, was done directly to look at whether or not the old study from 2010 was still up to date. And what they found was that experienced well-being continued to increase all the way up to $500,000, which almost perfectly matches the range that we discussed earlier. When you take the initial $75,000, you adjust it for families and adjust it for real inflation. If you want to be able to be not stressed and not worried about all of your needs and all of your basic wants, for the average household, you're gonna be in the couple of $100,000 range, absolutely. But here's the deal. Money is a tool, and just like all tools, it simply gives you leverage. Imagine a tool like a crowbar. You can use all of your strength and you're not gonna be able to yank that nail out of that wood using just your fingers. But you can use that exact same strength, likely a lot less of it, use a crowbar, apply the same strength, and you'll be able to pull the nail out. That's all tools do. They give you leverage so that you have more forced output for the same amount of force input. Just like technology, it allows you to have more of an output for the same amount of input. Just like animals on a farm, so you don't need human labor, just like tractors on a farm. It allows more output for the same amount of input. That's what leverage is, and that's what tools are. Money is a tool. And so if you secretly despise wealthy people, you're narcissistic, or you hate yourself, you're self-absorbed, selfish, deceitful, miserly, and resentful towards the world, more money will simply amplify those character traits because money is a tool and it gives you leverage to be more of and do more of what you already are. That being said, even if you think that applies to you, I'm going to give you a 3-step process, a 3-step plan that will allow anybody to be able to buy happiness with money. And if you doubt me, just stick around to the end, because as you'll see, anybody who has said money can't buy happiness simply hasn't given enough away yet. Step 1 is make all you can. Increase the amount of money you make. Don't worry about saving. Don't worry about investing. Don't worry about giving. Don't worry about anything except just your income. You're in this survival mode simply because you don't have enough income. 110% of your efforts should be focused on increasing your income. When my wife and I got married, we were in this exact same boat. We had expenses that exceeded our income. That is not a sustainable situation for anybody but the US government, who has the monopoly on being able to print money. So what I had to do was go get a better job. Now, in the early part of my career, I thought that that was always the solution to getting into a better financial situation, was just get a better job that paid more money. And I would submit to you now, and we'll talk about this at the end, that that is actually not the best solution. However, if you're sitting there making $40,000 or $50,000 with 2 kids at home, especially with the way inflation has been going the last couple of years, that is barely enough for you to be in survival mode, let alone for you to worry about saving. In terms of specifics, there are 2 things that I usually recommend in terms of increasing your income that are usually the fastest path for anybody without having to get any advanced degrees or certificates or have years of experience. It comes down to skills that can be learned very quickly. The first one is get yourself into a sales position. Sales jobs are, number one, inherently inflation protected because you are selling something that will increase in price along with inflation, and you get a percentage cut of that. And so your income is directly hedged against inflation. Number 2, it is a skill that you can translate to any industry. And so if you get into a sales position selling something that ends up not being a good fit, you can take that skill and apply it to literally any industry. And I would actually recommend this every year or 2 years, move to selling something else that is bigger or better, that costs more, so that you can maximize the amount of income you continue to increase. You're not sitting around waiting for pay raises, waiting for cost of living adjustments, waiting for promotions to middle management. It is simply, how good are you at that job? And it's one of the only jobs you can do without any sort of advanced degree that has an unlimited income potential. Now, the second thing that I would recommend is starting some sort of a side hustle or a side business. This is, again, something literally anybody can do. If you don't want to go the sales route, you can take your free time. You can use that to start a business. You are selling a product. You are spending your weekends or your evenings developing a product that you can sell to somebody. In the beginning, this will be much slower of a growth in your income, but the longer you stick at it, the more of a hockey stick curve that looks like, and your income will increase exponentially after you've been iterating and practicing for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. Don't worry about opening up an LLC. Don't worry about creating a website. Don't worry about doing literally any of the other stuff that feels like work, but actually isn't. The only thing you need to do is convince somebody else to buy something from you at a higher cost than it costs you to make it. Whether that's something you sell for your time, whether that's a digital product or a physical product, doesn't matter. The only thing you have to worry about is convincing somebody to buy something from you. And once you have somebody paying you the money, then you can worry about the next step, like a bank account. Where do I put this money? But until you get somebody who's actually paying you, do not worry about anything else. That is step 1. Okay, step 2 is save all you can. It is very easy to get on this hedonic treadmill where you continue to increase the cost, your lifestyle, as you make more and more money along the way. You're saying, hey, I finally got a better job, $20,000 raise. I got a promotion. Now I can finally afford to upgrade my car that's been breaking down on me. I can finally afford to get some nicer clothes that have been getting some holes in them or getting a little thin. I can finally afford to do this maintenance here. I can finally afford to upgrade this. We can go out on this better trip. And guess what? Before you know it, you're going to be back in the same place you were before, except this time you're there by choice. You're not there because you simply were living at the lowest threshold of the cost of living possible and you barely made enough money. Now it'll be your own fault because you're making way more money, but you're still not making ends meet. This is going to be the most mentally difficult part of the phase, but this is where you take as much money as possible and you put it away. You do not consume it. You don't use it for consumption. When you're making $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 per year, it's going to be very difficult to do that with a meaningful percentage. And that's why I put make more money at step 1, because it's harder to save when you're making 60 grand than it is when you're making 200 grand, obviously. But if you never build the skills to put $1 away when you're making 60 grand, you won't have the skills to put $10,000 away when you're making 200 grand. But saving is not simply about lowering your consumption. There are multiple nuanced levels to this. So yes, number 1, you have to use your money, not for consumption, but just for putting it away. But number 2, you actually have to do something with it, like invest it. Now, this requires you to do a little bit of learning, get a little bit of financial education, because in this step of the process, it's about saving, it's about protecting your money. So if you YOLO it all into some NFTs and some cryptocurrencies or some meme stocks, guess what? Your savings just go out the window. You're not actually saving anything. You're not building up that nest egg. You're not growing your wealth. So yes, you have to take the money that you don't use for consumption and you have to invest it, but you have to invest it wisely. You have to learn how to hedge your risks. You have to learn how to diversify with 8 to 12 uncorrelated assets. You have to hedge yourself from inflation. If you just put it all in the bank, inflation is going to eat away the purchasing power. You're going to watch your 50 grand turn into 45 grand, turn into 40 grand, turn into 35 grand. Again, not directly the numbers won't, but in terms of purchasing power as time goes on, that's exactly what's going to be happening as everything else gets more expensive, but your bank account number stays the same. And so saving and protecting your wealth not only is deferring consumption, but it's also being wise with what you do with that, investing and protecting it. And if you're looking for somebody to walk you through exactly what comes next for our nation, and most importantly, what you can do about it, I've just launched my newsletter and I'm calling it Letters from a Heretic, and it's completely free. It's the only place where I'm going to do deeper dives on financial topics that I seriously doubt you will hear anywhere else. As soon as you sign up, you will receive my 5-day series called The Most Dangerous Ideas in America. These are ideas that are so powerful and potentially devastating that could reshape the economic landscape of America and even the world, changing everything from how much money you have in the bank, the types of food you can afford to eat, and even when you can retire. We're going to talk about things like the real reason we may be on the verge of another world war, the rise of the House of Saw, the true location of the financial all-seeing eye, a secret manuscript that actually predicted the end of America and what that means for your wealth. We'll talk about America's coming dark summer and even the US dollar's final phase. If you're interested in receiving that and having me walk you through more complex financial topics that allow you to make better decisions, not only about how to protect your wealth, but also how to grow your wealth, especially during times of crisis. All you have to do is click on the link in the description below, submit your email, and I'll start showing you everything I know. And finally, the happiness part. So now you've made money, you've saved it, you've invested it, you've hedged it properly. So how to use that to actually buy happiness. Now, many people say money can't buy happiness, but whoever says that clearly just hasn't given enough away yet. And the author to that quote is unknown. Now, obviously, you can only give away what you have earned in income, grown through investing, and kept rather than consumed. So it's no use to try and go on a giving crusade before you try and make money and learn how to grow that money and protect it. The more you make, the more you can give. And by the way, giving is voluntary. So anything that is an involuntary redistribution of income or wealth where you get no say in how much or where it goes does not actually count as charity. That is simply by definition, theft. So here are some notes on how I give to charity effectively. Number one, stay local. The reason why is because many times the larger a charity or an organization gets, the more money goes towards overhead, buildings, salaries, things like that, which many times those things are important and necessary to be able to run the charity effectively. But the larger it gets, the more money gets spent on things like fundraisers rather than just doing the thing to do the thing. By staying local, you accomplish a couple of things. Number one, you can actually go and visit and see what they're doing with the money and see the lives that are being impacted and see the people that are being helped and make sure that your money is actually going towards what they say it's going towards. You can do this by literally just volunteering. Any charity out there will allow you to come volunteer on a Saturday or a Sunday and help out in what they're doing, whether it's packing food into boxes or something else. And to be honest, if they don't allow you to volunteer and join in, then maybe there's a reason why they don't want you to see something. Another tip is that I usually stick to things like food pantries, halfway houses, homeless shelters, foster care, things where you're giving money to people who actually really need it, like real victims rather than just like, offended people. The orphans, the widows, the least of these, the people who really need our help. Even like $1,000 a month is huge to a lot of these very tiny organizations that are making a massive difference. And by the way, one more note for the food pantries, don't just give food. If you spend $10 on food, you might feed one person by donating that food. If you give that money directly to the food pantry, usually they'll be able to stretch that out and feed like 10 to 100 people. It's insane how efficient they are by buying their food at scale. So if you actually want to help hungry or homeless people through food pantries, just give the money, don't give food. Now, obviously, giving to charities is not the only form of charity or giving or generosity. There's almost nothing as satisfying as giving a gift to somebody that you know and love, something that they would not be able to get for themselves. And this is really where money buying happiness comes in. It's by giving it away. It's by being extremely generous. It is infinitely more fulfilling than buying something for yourself or watching a number go up on the computer screen. And to be honest, giving and generosity doesn't even have to stop there. If you boil it down to the first principles of what is actually going on, even something like hiring for a position in your business. You started that side hustle, you've scaled it up, you're growing, you hire people. Maybe you don't have quite enough work for that full-time position, but you hire somebody for a full-time salary anyway. Guess what? You're giving, you're being generous. Not only that, but you are allowing people to produce and learn skills and provide for themselves, allowing them the dignity of being able to earn their way. A Gallup poll about 15 years ago, there was a global poll. They asked thousands of people all over the world, what is the number one need that you have? Now, most people who were running the survey expected the answers to be things like food, water, medical care, something like that. Guess what it wasn't even close. Guess what the number one thing was that people said was their first need? A good job. Most people around the world don't want the handout if they can help it. Yeah, sure, everybody needs to survive, right? So they'll take the handout if that's the only thing they can get. Most people actually want to earn their way, to provide for themselves. They want that dignity of learning the skills and being productive and being a contributing member of society. That's what most people actually want. So the wealthier you become, especially if you grow your own business and you can start hiring people, the more you can actually give back and contribute to people learning those skills and producing for society and earning their way, getting what they actually want. And the sky's the limit here. This is obviously just a very, very tiny, minuscule look at what giving and generosity might look like. And this is, quite honestly, why this is the last step of the fun, why money buys happiness, because this is where the creativity can really come in. Whether it's by creating products and giving them away for free, whether it's things like selling a product that is, just enough to have some profit where the value that the person is getting is way more. Creativity is endless here. And the more self-sufficient you are, the better your nest egg is, the wealthier you are, the more you don't have to worry about being in survival mode, being in fight or flight, wondering how you're going to meet the next month's worth of bills, wondering if the paycheck's going to be enough. You don't have to worry about that. Guess what? Everything else you produce, all the wealth you make, you can do the fun stuff with. You can do the good stuff with. So the wealthier you are, the more you can give. In summary, the formula for using money to buy happiness is make all you can, save all you can, give all you can. And although I try to live by all these, I want to clarify that none of these are my ideas. They all come from many more wise men long before me. A lot of these are obviously very biblical principles as well. And again, if you're interested in my free upcoming webinar, the Asymmetric Trading Masterclass, don't forget to register with the link in the description below. As always, thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.